Welcome to the 2022 Holistic Pain Relief Summit. I'm thrilled that you've taken the time to join us. My name is Trish Rossiter and I'm your host. The summit is for those living with pain who want to get back to uh, um, living fully without being held back by having to take medication and have invasive procedures. If you haven't already done so, I invite you to join our Facebook group. Each day there will be a thread where you are invited to share your takeaways, perhaps ask questions of the speakers and the other participants. And we'd love to hear your best takeaway as well. I am so happy today to welcome Dr. John Ryan to speak with us. John Ryan is a professor of medicine and he's a practitioner of energy and conscious-based medicine. John is the author of two books, Unity Field Healing, Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing, and Volume 2, which we don't have here, but John is also the founder of Unity Field Healing. It's a new quantum process based on consciousness activation of our DNA field to support healing and personal evolution. Thank you, John, for being here. I really appreciate it.
It's a delight, Trish. Thank you so much. And thank you for inviting me.
So I met John a couple of years ago when I started to take his Unity Field Healing course to become a practitioner. What I really appreciated learning from John was about energy. And I highly recommend his book, The Unity Field Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing, because you had a way of speaking as a radiologist and as a doctor to be able to help us understand what energy was and how to bring it all together. Can you share a little bit about that for our listeners, John?
For sure, yeah. So there's an interesting change that's happening in healing concepts, and both in medicine and in holistic practices that are a little bit outside the traditional norms of medicine. And in the shift, what we're coming to understand is the energetic nature of reality and how everything is based on consciousness. And so all the pioneering work in healing involves those two concepts in some way. And it kind of began going back to the time of Albert Einstein, when he introduced us to the equation E, energy equals mc squared, mass times the velocity of light. And we start to understand that everything that's material is a form of energy that's condensed in vibration or expanded in vibration in such a way that it appears more solid or it's more fluid or it's more invisible. And when you start exploring energy, you realize there's energies that are seen or sensed through the 5 human senses. And then there are also energies that are outside the range of our perception. And so all kinds of human beings have had interesting experiences, where they see energy or see the auric fields around people or the etheric body and so on. And if we go back in Eastern systems of healing, this knowledge was actually present in the past. So when we look at, for example, Chinese medicine or Ayurvedic medicine, they understood there's an energy field in the body, and they work with this field in acupuncture, acupressure, with the concept of meridians and chakras and all these kinds of things. So they understand there's an energy system in the human body. And what we're beginning to understand is that the human body is a field of energy that has all of its functions and its physical form that's based on organizing fields of energy that are invisible to the human eye. Now, what becomes really interesting is we're also starting to understand that consciousness forms energy. In other words, for something to come into form, it originates as a thought. So for example, you might be sitting in your chair and you think, oh, I would like an ice cream. And the next thing you know, you're off your chair and you're either going to the freezer or down the street to get yourself an ice cream, and you materialize the experience of having the ice cream. But it began as a thought. And so everything that shows up in the world as either an activity or even right down to physical form, when we start understanding the depths of this, exists because there's patterned energy formed in consciousness that leads to its creation. And this becomes paramount in understanding healing because we begin to understand that so much of what we experience and live as human beings or manifest as human beings, whether it be physical diseases or psychological states or relationships or you name it, all has origins in thought and consciousness. And so because we can see this bridge now because of the way science and psychology are evolving, as well as all the holistic patterns of healing that people are bringing forward, we understand that we have a much greater governance over our health and well-being than we realized. And so things that were considered fixed because they appear in the material world are becoming more fluid. And we see that we can change some of these things if we can get to the root or understand what's behind the pattern that's manifest in the world. So kind of a complex understanding. Really what it says is consciousness leads to form and experience. And therefore, if we can repattern consciousness in some ways, we can heal things. When we look at pain, because that's kind of the topic of the conversation, we realize so many of the things that lead to pain in the human body have psychological correlations. And the body becomes a place where so much pain is perceived and held because of things happening in our consciousness that we may not understand because they're subconscious. They're in our consciousness, but not necessarily at the forefront of our mind.
Mm.
And so a lot of the things we live as human beings can be healed if we start to understand that. And so with that, a whole field of energy medicine has begun to emerge. And so people have started, discovering Reiki and hands-on healing and acupressure and tapping and, all these modalities that are being brought forth to work directly with the energy of the body. And they can bring energy into places where there are restrictions or congealed energies in the system or patterns of energy in the system that need correction in different ways. And so there are people who experience unbelievable healing manifestations because of their openness to this concept and allowing themselves to experience these kinds of things. Now, if that were not strange enough, it's a little hard to go into the world of healing without bringing in a spiritual component. Like science always likes to speak in strictly scientific terms. We talk about consciousness, we don't talk about souls and spirit. And we talk about energy as opposed to understanding that, the fact that everything that exists as an energetic manifestation is founded in a field that has this incredible order that's hard for any of us to fully understand. So from a spiritual perspective, this is often termed spiritual terms. So, we may say the oneness or the unified field of consciousness or the creator. And so spirit and science begin merging in a really special way. And when you start opening to the energetic and consciousness component of health and healing. And so for many people, as they open to energy healing, they also have strange or unusual spiritual opening that goes hand in hand with the process. And that's been my universal experience with everybody who does. And we start to understand that we're souls and that what we're living in human form has its own purpose for being. And we have access to healing through this spiritual connection, if you will, or this spiritual reality that only really opens up profoundly when we ourselves open up in our minds to its reality. Because before that, it's kind of veiled from us, or we don't seem to be able to work with it in any meaningful way. But once we do, then we start to be able to work with healing in a more conscious way. And so it's a big topic. It kind of opens up the universe as well.
Right.
In
So
there.
it's like the pain that we are that is still lingering in our subconscious. It
Correct.
sounds like.
Correct. Or sometimes the physical manifestations of that consciousness too. So, like, for example, chronic pain in the body will affect many things. If we feel pain, we need to protect our body. We end up taking posture that is allowing us to live without feeling the pain constantly. And that can create other restrictions in the system and so on and so forth. So much of healing is, the way I see healing is, it's connecting with the innate knowledge that's within us to help bring corrective patterns into our energy field to help us live free and unencumbered from those restrictions or blockages in the system. And so you can see how energy medicine is really suited for doing that kind of work. Because when we're doing energy medicine, what you're doing is you're connecting with fields of energy and consciousness that are a little bit bigger than your everyday thought patterns. You're opening to this world of energy and allowing energy to flow into the system and vibrate into the system and touch the system in ways that can create releases of energy. For example, when I first started exploring energy medicine myself back in the day, I had this profound opening during an energy session that I was receiving. And it was like my heart center became all nervous and vibrating, and it popped open. And as this energy moved through the system, I shed tears. I started crying in a way I've never cried in my entire life. I was just sobbing and sobbing and sobbing. And it went on for about 10 minutes. But as this energy worked through me on the other side of the experience, I felt a freedom in my being that I had never felt before that point in time. And it was like I released a lot of grief and sadness in my heart. And, that sounds kind of woo woo if people don't think in those terms normally, but it isn't at all. It's very, very real. And so, as that energy was released and I allowed myself just to let it move through me instead of holding on to it, I was allowed to experience a different reality than I had ever experienced up to that point in my life. And so that's just a very tangible explanation or example of how we can release things in the system, the freedom that it can bring as it's restored.
Thank you for that. Um, John, I'd like you, if you could touch on how we are all connected. Some of our practitioners offer distance treatments.
Mhm.
I know you do as well. We
Mhm.
have cranial sacral offering
Yeah.
distance, Reiki by distance. Can you speak to that, John? Like, how can that possibly work?
Yeah, that's a little mystical, isn't it? It
Yeah.
seems a little far-fetched to our 3D consciousness or our 3D way of thinking. As you start to explore energy and you learn more about it, this becomes very natural and acceptable. And as you live it and experience, you realize how possible it truly is. But at the beginning, people have a warranted skepticism, I think. Like it sounds a little bit too crazy or too silly. But what happens is, as a human being, we are connected to a system of energy, a universal system of energy. There's a field of energy that's part of the planet through which we're all connected in this field. It's like we're fish swimming in the sea. So we don't see the energy that connects us because it exists at a dimension, if you will, or a level of reality that's imperceptible to the limitations of our senses. With our eyes, for example, we can only see light in the visible spectrum, we see, we're familiar with the spectrum, the red, yellow, orange, so on and so forth. We can see light that falls within those wavelengths. But energy outside of that spectrum, like, X-rays, for example, or radiation, we don't see at all. We can't visualize the energy, but the energy is very real. Like, for example, if someone is exposed to radiation or the sun, you don't
Mm.
see necessarily the energy that would create a burn or affect the tissues, but it's there and it's every bit as real. Electricity is the same way. You don't see it in the wall, but if you put your key in a socket, you're going to realize pretty quickly there's an energy there you don't see. And so we live in this field of energy. And with consciousness, as we expand, as our energy system expands, as we begin to discover the truer nature of the human experience, the spiritual nature of the human experience, we realize we're in this field and we're connected to other people. And when we put our attention and consciousness together in a space, it's like we're creating a quantum room or a quantum bubble of energy. There's a connection that takes place outside of linear thinking or 3D that allows us to be together and work together. And so people will experience that sometimes, like parents of children may have a perception about their child, even though they know they're in trouble, but they've not spoken to them, and yet they know it in their heart that something is up. It's an intuition or a feeling that it's kind of traveling through this energy. And so when we work in a healing context, we can work that way. We can make a connection with another person and do work in consciousness and energy that's not limited by the 3D structure, because it's in a field that's touching all things. And so people can receive energy work and energy healing even if they're across the globe or in another place. And so that's something, it's one of those things that it just sounds too weird to be true, but if you experience it, you'll realize how true it is. And
For sure.
experience undoes the doubt.
Yes, and I have experienced it, and for sure, yeah, I'm glad you were able to share with our listeners just how that works,
Yeah.
how that's possible. So, tell me, how does one learn to work with energy medicine and quantum healing?
Yeah. So I think the easiest way to learn is to get a foundational understanding and education. And so the book that you pointed out, the Unity Field Healing Volume 1 that I authored, the reason I wrote this book, Trish, is because it's a foundation of energy medicine. This book it's called Volume 1 because it's the introduction to the world of energy medicine. It's not so much about Unity Field Healing, the modality that I've brought forth. It's about all the knowledge you need to understand why that works. And
Yes,
so it introduces you to the energy bodies, to the chakras, to the nature of energy and how consciousness impacts the energy that we manifest in the world, and how we can heal with this knowledge in different ways. And so, and it goes into concepts that show how our consciousness patterning, or the wounds we carry, or the psychological patterns that we carry, can also contribute to what we create in our lives and in the world. And so it's really what you need to begin a foray into energy medicine and healing is a foundational understanding. Now, what I found in working with people is I would have to tell people 5 different books, or read this and then read that, and kind of put it in a sequence and stuff. And I was really unsatisfied with what was available to teach people about energy and healing. And so I wanted to bring together everything I had garnered from my own experience as well as my own education in a form where people, you kind of get everything you need in one book. And so that
yes,
was really my goal of writing the book. And
yeah,
so, by developing that foundational education, I think what then starts to happen is each one of us is tapping into a field of intuition and expanded consciousness that guides us. It guides each and every one of us. And then we're led to things that are very specific to our own path, our own temperament, our own spiritual purpose. And it takes us, you start to see there's this guidance system that takes over, and it brings us each to things in our life that are really meant for us to see and experience and know. So, through the venue of something like this wonderful event that you're doing, people will connect to things they didn't know about. And as they connect to it, they're going to feel a call towards some things, or feel an attraction to some things. And that's their intuition that's working. And if they kind of follow through on that, you'll see you have this inner guidance system. It's like a compass that's meant to guide you individually and uniquely to the things that will serve you or help you, or are meant to be part of your reality for one purpose or another, whether it's to heal or to participate in the knowledge and help other people heal. And so that's really how that works. But starting with the foundation is the way to do it. And then from there, you'll see that you get your own guidance, really. That's what happens.
right. And for sure, I'll be sharing that with our listeners here on
Yeah.
here on this page. And really, and a huge part of this is quieting our mind and
Yeah,
stop doing and listen to ourselves,
very true.
because we have answers that we may push aside because that's not what society says is the norm.
100%. It's so important what you're saying. And we've evolved in this world where it's very mentally based and not always spiritually based. And so people have to learn to kind of disconnect from the frenzy of modern day thinking, and all the chaos and emotions and fear mongering and news and all the things that are so distracting to the human psyche. and learn to quiet themselves, go inside, find the center in themselves, and learn to begin to live in that place of energetic balance and being. And so, learning to meditate, learning to still, spending time in nature, music, very powerful in helping us achieve that, is all so helpful in teaching us to get there and ultimately to live there. And but what you're saying is so important. It's really that process of internalizing and becoming aware of the reality within us. We only hear when we're not so distracted by the senses.
Right. So that's the challenge that we're putting forth, is to take 5 minutes, even 5 minutes a day, just to stop
Exactly.
and listen.
I always
So
say
John,
I have to practice what I preach.
yes,
It's very easy to say, but often challenging to do. But it
yes,
really is a noble effort for sure.
for sure, for sure. It's not easy, but then, as the saying goes, that anything that's worthwhile isn't necessarily the easiest path
Correct.
to take, but this one is.
Yeah,
So, John, would you share a little bit about your unity field healing?
sure.
Because this is uh, different than Reiki, but working with the energy field. If you could
Absolutely.
share a bit more.
For sure. And so unity field healing is it's a process of energy healing, and working with energy to achieve healing, and also personal evolution, or what I would call spiritual evolution. And it's a little bit of an unusual work because it came to me through a process of guidance that I received in visions. I was, as people start to do energy things and, explore consciousness, you begin to have some experiences where you might see energy or have kundalini movements of energy in the body and so on. And some people will have visions or, dreams of guidance and these kinds of things that can guide each one of us on our path. And so I was kind of given a series of visions that began to teach me about the energetic structure of DNA and how our DNA is part of a system of energy that I can only view as spiritual in its design. It's like the soul of who each one of us is has a connection through the energy field of what I refer to as the quantum DNA, or the 24th chromosome. And so in the visions, I was shown to work in this field to help create healing and transformation. It's kind of like going into the world of energy to help us bring in new energy or bring in new healing potential through the modality of the work. And so the work is relatively simple in one way because you're working with consciousness and energy with the human body and with the consciousness of the soul in the human body, and helping them to bring healing into the body through work in this quantum DNA field. So for people who are new to energy healing, it's kind of, I guess, an advanced concept because it's kind of out there a little bit until you start to understand. But you see from your experience, Trish, with the training, how we are able to reach a point where we actually do understand these kinds of things. The information was given to me in a way so I could present it and teach it and deliver it, and then initiate people to even be practitioners working with the modality and with the energy. So over the course of time, we have almost 400 practitioners now around the world who've trained, and they're doing incredible work with people and having wonderful healing experiences. So so much more I could share about it, but the best way for people to learn about it is probably to go to the website and begin to read about it, because the sequences are there, the steps are there, the information about how the system is designed and work, the vision. I have pictures of some of the visions I received to kind of guide the development of the work. And then information about practitioners who are available all around the world. And many practitioners do work at a distance with people. And I believe you'd be open to that yourself, Trish. So I encourage people to reach out.
Absolutely, absolutely,
And they can connect with practitioners, or people may be interested in becoming a practitioner. So information on the training, it's all there on the website.
absolutely. And John, I know I had availed of your three audio recordings, and that's what you're giving up as a potential prize, I guess, so to
Yeah,
speak,
yeah.
for three lucky
Absolutely, yeah.
people. So
Yeah.
everyone's invited to sign up to Dr. John Ryan's website. I'll put the link here, and your name will go into a draw to win a package of 3 Unity Field healings. And could you talk just briefly a little bit about that, John?
Sure, yeah. So the work can be delivered in a couple of ways. When the work first evolved or came into being, it was through, I was being taught how to do the work. So I kind of had to develop the sessions, and I kind of learned the form of the sessions. And then I was guided to create audios for the 3 sessions that finally emerged as the pattern of the work. And so there's 3 audio meditations that allow people to experience the initiations of session 1, session 2, and session 3. And so when I speak, or, I'm in, doing forums like this, I always like to give people the opportunity to win a prize where I send them the audios of all 3 sessions. So if people enter the link to the contest, I will, draw 3 names from whoever enters, and we'll send them access to the Unity Field Healing package. And so the 3 audios are there with explanations and so forth. And so 3 lucky people will receive that. And then people can also sign up independently on the website. So if you go to visit unityfieldhealing.com, you can join the mailing list and stay in touch.
Great. Thank you so much.
Really my
This
pleasure.
topic is absolutely massive, but I really appreciate your explanations of how, when other practitioners are going to speak of, yes, we can do this by distance, or tapping, or, emotional resolution. How does it happen? But you've given us a very, very good foundation
Good.
on the energy and our consciousness. And yeah, highly recommend John's book, Unity Field Healing, Volume 1, Foundations of Energy Medicine and Quantum Healing. Thank you, John. I appreciate it.
Really my pleasure, Trish.
Thank you. And for those tuning in, please be sure to come back for the rest of the interviews in the Holistic Pain Relief Summit. Remember to access your chance for John's free gift, and pop into the Facebook group and share your takeaways from today's expert speakers. If you know of anyone else who could benefit from these talks, please share. They can join at holisticpainreliefsummit.com, and the speakers' presentations will be live for 30 hours. Okay, thank you.